One of the most powerful elements of the Coding Room's IDE is our test bench. In the test bench, you can build all kinds of test cases that will automatically grade, automatically assess, and provide feedback to your learners. Test cases come in a couple different forms. First, you can build input-output comparisons, or you can build unit tests, or manually graded items. You can even write your own custom bash script tests. Each of these are incredibly powerful and allow you to do what you need to test your students, your learners' workspaces the way you need. Let's check out an input-output comparison first. Each test allows you to give it a name, amount of points it's worth, some feedback that the learners will receive if they fail this test, and then specifics about the test. For instance, for an input-output comparison, you can select a compare method to compare your expected output to the learner's actual output. So it doesn't have to perfectly match. You can select how you'd like to compare. You can use flexible equality where you ignore case and white space. You can make it so it does have to match or equal exactly. You can also just check if it contains the value you provide at least once. And additionally, you can also write your own regular expression to create a really powerful comparison. Then you simply type the inputs that the student's program will receive and the output that you'd expect the program to produce. If the program doesn't have any inputs or isn't expected to collect inputs, you can just leave that blank. And then you can provide the output here. Let's assume that the student's program wanted to collect a user's first name and last name. You would type the first name, and then on a new line, the additional input that you'd want to provide the program. Let's say the last name. And then the expected output that the student's program should produce. Like, let's say it was supposed to say, hello, comma, and the person's first and last name. Now you've built an input-output test that will give the student's program 2 lines of input and compare the output that the student's program produces with this output. Let's give it a test. I didn't set up the template to be able to do this, but we can still run the test against it. Notice that my test failed against my template. It shows the actual output of the learner's code and the expected output that I provided in the test. It's really important to run your tests against your template and your model solution in order to make sure it's working correctly. Now, students or learners could still hard code in this output and pass the test. That's why you want to add multiple tests to ensure that the learner's solution meets your requirements. For instance, taking the first name and the last name and using it to produce the output, and not just hard coding hello Joe Mazzone or whatever it may be. So you can continue to add as many Coding Room's test cases as you need in order to check the learner's code. As mentioned, we also have unit tests that you can build. And we offer unit tests in a number of different languages. For instance, here I have an IDE that's working with Python. So my default is Python's unit test library. Python is available on all Coding Room's images, so you can use Python unit tests on any language. We do have some unit tests available that are custom to particular languages and may only be installed on certain languages. For instance, JUnit will be installed on all of our Java languages. JavaScript Jest, JavaScript Jasmine, Google Test for C++, RSpec for Ruby, NUnit for C#, in the check framework for C. You can select the unit testing framework that you'd like to use. By default, we will give you some boilerplate that goes along with a particular language that you've selected. And then you can provide your unit test code here in the test code options. You can also create additional files you'd like to bundle with your unit test. For instance, maybe some data that you'd like to include just with your test, but is not provided to learners. Or it could be other helper files to help run your test. You can upload files, of course, from your computer. And once you have files, you'll be able to edit their names and delete them. If you need additional power, we also allow you to create custom bash script tests. Custom bash script tests allow you to write a bash script to run and do whatever you need to on the instance in the AutoGrader environment. This will copy all of the students' code, their entire workspace, all the files they created, and it will run your script. We have ways in this boilerplate template to show you how to send things to our debug file, which is where all the information learners will see about their test if it fails. Our feedback file, which is another file that will be used in order to show information to the learner about anything you'd like to say to them. It will insert and override this feedback for failed test case. The result, which can be a P or an NP for pass and fail. That's how you write in your script to tell the AutoGrader to pass or fail the student. And some other niceties. So you can build your own script. Again, you can add your own files and upload your own files in order to bundle with your script additional helpers or any other files you may need to properly run your test. Lastly, you can also add manual grading. Let's say there are components that you want to assess the learners on, like good variable names and other things that are really hard to test. Automatically, you can go and you can manually allocate a certain amount of points for that particular test. Not much to set up here other than if you want a custom message for this particular test's name. You'll just go in and you'll adjust the learner's score dependent on the points you want to give them for that particular manual test. And the learners will know that that certain amount of points is allocated for that test. For instance, if I was to run these tests right now, you'll see that one is marked needs review, one failed, one passed, and another failed. This is the type of result that the learner will see when they run tests, seeing if things need instructor review or if they passed and failed, and how many points they received. All this information is valuable to the learner in their journey and helps them persist, check their work without the need of an instructor. They can instead own their learning and continue to understand what is failing in their code and what is working correctly.